Welcome to the Connected Teamwork Podcast by Growth Leaders Network. How do we learn to truly thrive together? How do we stay connected to our authentic selves, each other, and our purpose as a team, especially when challenged? How do we unlock the deeper levels of group intelligence? Enjoy this episode of the Connected Teamwork Podcast and learn practical tools to evolve the connectedness of your team to its next level.
Hey, welcome back to the Connected Teamwork Podcast, where we help leaders and teams connect more deeply to themselves, each other, and their purpose. I'm one of your hosts, Hylke Faber, and I'm here together with my delightful co-host, Carson Heady. Carson, how are you today?
Delightful, Hylke. Thank you for being with me. I always enjoy our chats.
And as do I. Today, we will dive into connected communication practice about asking for help. It is connected communication practice number 9, and it's about asking for help, and it's also about giving and being of service in conversations. And to me, this is such a beautiful topic to dive into today. I should invite you to this, as you get into this conversation, think about challenging conversations you've been in and what our mind typically does. And what my mind and what our minds tend to do is the more challenging, the more we become isolated in our mind. I have to know, I have to know, I have to be right, I have to say the right thing, I've got to figure this out. What if I don't know this? I'm not prepared enough. All of this stuff that isolates us, that loses sight of our interconnectedness and how we're in this together, how we're an organism. It's like a tree where one branch says, "Oh, I don't have enough water," and thinking the rest of the tree doesn't notice. No, the rest of the tree does notice. I think about a conversation I had actually early this morning, where I was working with some people on a culture journey, and we're at this point where we're looking at how do we create engagement of a group of people that we call the change agents. And people go through different things: layoffs, changes, job rotations, whatever it might be. And I felt going into this call like, what's the right framework? What is the thing that I need to present? And my little still voice inside said, well, you don't know. You need to think about this together. So I just asked and I said, hey, uh, what's going on with this group of people? What do you think their challenges are? What help do you think they need? And my asking these questions was my asking the people I was with in this call for help. And then we ended up having a very rich conversation with some beautiful insights that between those two ears by themselves would not have been possible. Carson, tell us about your experience with asking for help.
This is an ironically humorous one for me to respond to because historically it's been one that I've grappled with and struggled with. But as time has gone by and hopefully I've gotten wiser and gained more experience, it's become something I've gotten better at and try consciously now to invest in. But my experience and my perspective on this is that asking for help is a muscle that we need to develop before we're desperate for it. And what I mean by that is we need to get into the default of asking for help as opposed to shrinking. And shrinking can look like a lot of different things. It can look like disappearing. It can look like going out and being the lone wolf. But some of us isolate by, overperforming and trying to be the smartest person in the room and, always being the voice that's heard. And I think one of the things, and I've shared this on our show before, as a leader, the best step that I ever took was getting over myself and, being the hero maker and not the hero. And frankly, when we are the hero maker, we have to ask for help, and we have to understand what help and support looks like for those that we seek to serve. And so from an internal perspective, we got to think about why is it that we don't, why that isn't our default to ask for help. And I think sometimes it is because help can be cast as weakness, or not being able to come up with the response, or the attribute of self-reliance is some type of a hindrance, when the reality is people want to feel and be needed. And when you're actually granting someone that ability, there's a lot of strength in being able to do that. So that's been my experience. It's not something that I came up being good at all, because I was kind of thrown into different career situations where I had to really learn to do it. And I was under the gun. There was pressure. But I had to learn to lean on and reach out to other people. And that has been one of my greatest strengths over the last few years.
Yeah. It's such an interesting balance between not becoming a victim and helpless, which is a station that I also know from my past. Like, well, I'm just throwing up my hands and help, asking for help. Then learning about agency. And I love the 1% principle. I was looking for the 1% that is within my control, that I can focus on, letting go of the 99% it's not. And then maturing more into this part of my 1% is being very clear about what's mine to do and what is mine to ask for help on, and what is mine to offer help on. I'll give you another example, since it's Monday and I read the New York Times on Sunday morning, and I read that the Colorado River water was going to be shut off towards Phoenix because of some program, which for this city would be a disaster. And my hero brain went immediately to, okay, what does this mean for me, for my family? What do I need to do? How am I going to fix this? And then my little voice said, well, hold on. There are millions of other people who are reading this article right now, including probably hundreds of thousands of people in the area that I live, that I love. I too love living in Arizona. And so I was like, you know what? I'm going to go online and see what I can find about organizations that think about water conservation, global warming, what Arizona's future looks like. And so I actually asked Copilot, tell me about organizations, and I came up with like 15 organizations. And I clicked. And even just noticing that I'm not in this by myself, got me out of this black and white, me against the world thinking, and actually had me offer sort of to become a volunteer for an organization called Arizona Forward. I mean, this is not the first time this challenge is coming up. Yes, with global warming, it's becoming a lot worse. This, this is a not a convergent question. This is a divergent question. What are you going to do with this? And I find the same in conversations. Like the mind often thinks, I have to solve this, and there's only one way, and I have to do it. And asking for help means, I don't know. I'm going to ask you, and together we will explore. And it's kind of fun. It became inspiring. So how does that land with you, Carson?
I think it's very human to receive news and then have those thoughts and feelings and emotion. But what I applaud you for there, Hylke, is that ability to identify the path you're going down and to be able to then take a step back. You and I talk about the balcony view, being able to look at the overview of, wait a minute, there could be some other ways that I could go about making meaningful change and building community. I often tell people on my team, even with projects, like, don't let anything be a surprise. But also, like, I don't ever want to surprise my boss with anything, but also don't ever go down alone, because you never know where things may go awry. So raise the flag, ring the bell, whatever it is. And, we sometimes have to get over that preconceived notion that asking for help is some sign of weakness. I think sometimes, like, competence can become camouflage. We leverage this overconfidence in our own ability, like, oh, I got this. And we wear that like it's a badge of honor, but it's okay to lean on someone else. In fact, it's actually a gift when you're trusting your self state of being to another human. There's no better type of connectedness. I think giving that actually restores agency. So asking for help is not actually giving up responsibility. It's just expanding your field of view, and it's moving forward better. I think it's fascinating as well, Hylke, that you leverage the analogy around using AI. And I think that in this day and age, very similarly, just like we can ask Copilot a question, we can also ask other colleagues, peers, our trusted board of advisors, the other people that we've appointed to be in our sphere, or that life has ordained to be in our sphere. We can ask all of them questions and frankly move forward with that combined wisdom and that collective strength. And that's why asking for help is so important, because otherwise I'm going alone with only my own tunnel vision of how things are. But if I can tap into the collective wisdom that surrounds me, my gosh, anything becomes possible. And that's why asking for help is so important.
Here. I like that, the idea of competence becoming camouflage. Absolutely. I can see that in myself. I also think there's something about how we ask for help. I find that, like, for example, in the meeting this morning, I was tempted to do about 10 paragraphs with my perspective and then basically say, but I really don't know. What do you think? And so being able to enter a situation and then saying, hey, I have a perspective and I really don't know, or I have a perspective and I really would like your help on this. And being able to be as invested in the question of asking for help as you might be in coming up with your own perspective. I think that helps to people will feel that. People will feel that. Often I think when we ask for help, it becomes more like an afterthought. Oh, it'd be nice. And what are your thoughts? Oh, it would be nice to hear about that from you. That's not quite it. Like, make that a, hey, it's like it's like cooking a dish. I need 6 eggs for this dish, and I have 1. I need your help. Clear as that. So maybe we're gonna take a short break. After the break, I'd like to maybe explore with you, how do we ask for help in a quality way? How do we ask for help in a quality way? You've been listening to the Connected Teamwork podcast, where we are talking about asking for help, connected communications practice number 9. See you after the break.
You are listening to the Connected Teamwork podcast by Growth Leaders Network. Do you want to learn more about building the next level of connectedness in your team? Please contact Growth Leaders Network on LinkedIn. And now, back to the show.
So this idea of asking for help, like asking for help in a quality way, like, how do we do that? How do we go about that, Carson? What do you think?
I think it starts, Hylke, with clarity and specificity, but also humility. You have to genuinely and authentically reach out and meet the person that you want to get help from. You can't simply drop your problem in somebody's lap and say, what do I do? Um, you have to explain what you're trying to achieve and accomplish, what you've already tried, where you're stuck, and why you value that particular person's perspective. You alluded to this earlier. So a quality request might sound something like, here's the situation, Hylke. Here's how I'm thinking about it. I might have tunnel vision. What am I missing? I value your perspective. I really, I know and understand, and I admire some of the work you've done in this area. Would love to hear your thoughts. And then just stop and listen. And also you've got to fight that compulsion to then like contradict or even like not argue, but respond and defend yourself from everything that they say as well. You have to completely be open to the feedback and perspective, because in essence, you're looking for them to help you see around the corner. That's why the specificity is so key. And you've got to be intentional about what you're asking for. Are you asking for advice? Are you asking for an introduction, feedback? Are you asking for somebody to carry part of the work with you? And then when you do that, like if you're asking them to kind of get in the boat with you and join the party, you've got to understand like their vantage point, their their desire for involvement, what matters to them. All those types of things are going to make it easier for them to say yes, because you need to have a plan. It's asking, but also what does it look like on the other side of their response? I think it's going back earlier to what we were talking about as well. I'll close with this. We have to make sure that we are not waiting until the point of collapse. You've got to develop the intentional muscle and strengthen the muscle of asking for help. And so don't wait until the point of desperation when you have to have it, because desperation can lead to disaster. High achievers a lot of times will wait until the building's on fire because they think they need, when they need help, it signals weakness, but it doesn't. And getting used to asking for help is what we need to do in order to get better at it, but also understand the value that help brings. Because like most things, once we get better at that asking process, the outcome and the result we get is so vastly superior to what we've been experiencing up to that point that it shows us why we need to default to asking for help as opposed to having that be a last ditch.
I really appreciate how you frame asking for quality help, not waiting too long, being specific, letting the person know where they can help, and also not falling into the trap of trying to defend or maybe force fit what they're saying and what you're already thinking. What I'm hearing from you, and this I find very valuable in the asking for help, it's like tennis. If I serve you hard, likely is you also going to run hard on the other side and serve me hard back, right? So I set a certain context, I create a certain energy. So if I think about the meeting of this morning, it wasn't that I showed up, I didn't do this perfectly, but when I showed this morning, I wasn't like throwing up my hands like, oh, okay, what should we do with the drunken sailor, with the change agent? No, it was, here's what we've tried. This is the motivation that they might have. They're worried about layoff. They're worried about their financial security because in this current market, getting a new job may not be so easy for them, and they are reliant on their income. So now, and they have limited time and bandwidth. So given all that, what do we think we need to be doing, right? That created a container in which to have a conversation. Then the second thing that happened was the person I spoke to gave a suggestion. And the suggestion was to change a format of engagement, be less sending and more exchange. And you know, Carson, what my ego did with that? Oh, I did something wrong. How did I miss that? right? Because there's still a certain belief in me that somehow I need to have and create the A to Z of the universe. And if I miss a letter, gosh, am I a failure? And so, fortunately, I didn't react, but I could feel my brain going to, oh, how am I going to receive this? Let them know that I got this, as opposed to what we actually did, which was listening to what this person had to say, and then, okay, that makes a lot of sense. Let's say more about that. And then a new thought emerged. But that sort of staying in the asking space long enough, that requires a lot of, for me, still a lot of intentionality. It's not automatic for me. So Carson, when you think about being asked, let's talk about that for the last time next segment that we have today. Being asked for help, how is that for you?
I think it's the ultimate compliment. Hylke, you alluded to things that are very human, and you and I actually were having a conversation prior to the show, and I made a comment that I'll resurface here, and that when you're doing some of this work, it actually makes you more alert to these types of things, not only in yourself, but also in that desire to see others. And so, when you're trying to meet someone where they are, if somebody asks for help, it's critical to recognize that this is someone who is risking vulnerability to enlist your support. And it's the ultimate compliment because they view you as somebody who can be supportive, non-judgmental in this space. And that's a very important responsibility. I think care and accountability, they're not opposites. So we can lean in these moments, be held accountable, hold accountable, help somebody with accountability, and care. In fact, it's kind of the ultimate in caring, in my opinion. I mentioned earlier, I've leaned way too heavily on self-reliance before. It can be a survival strategy, but it can also end up as a prison. And if somebody is coming out into that, and you've also, the reason that I want to double down on this being such a big responsibility is, what is this person's usual approach in asking for help? Do they frequently ask for help? Is this their first time? Because if they're asking you for help, keep in mind that their experience with you may dictate how they do this going forward. And so, I think years ago, my answer would have probably been, yeah, it feels good. It feels great to be asked for help. I love leaning in and doing an XYZ. And there have been times where I've been asked for help a lot. And it's almost gotten to the point where it has been it's been a stretch. It's been cumbersome to reach out and do all the things that people have asked me to do, but I like to help other people, so I do it. But I think now, at this stage in my life and in my career, I look at this as, and sometimes maybe it's not even me doing all of that work. It's what doesn't necessarily have to look like me swooping in and saving the day. It can be illuminating some paths that maybe they weren't thinking about. So the last thing I'll say about that is, it's made me reflect on working with them, that exchange, to figure out what the right and appropriate levels of help will be in this moment. Because the last thing you want to do, it's like a kid or somebody who works for you. You can't swoop in and do it for them. You've got to make sure that you support, that you help them see around corners, you remove barriers, you give, you model the right behavior. But at the same token, you can't just do for them. You've got to let them and trust them to go out and do, and then support and be there if and when they come back and they fail, because inevitably we all do. So I think those are the key components of being asked for help. Realize the responsibility that's in front of you and what this person is risking in order to ask, but also make sure that you show up the right way so that they have the right experience with asking for help. And ideally, they are better at doing it in the future.
Asking, setting them up to be a quality asker for help going forward, also setting them up to see their own accountability. I'd like to think about it as, don't be a candy store, be more like a gym. People love to come with, what's the answer to this? What should I do? No, my role is usually not that. My role is usually, well, tell me more about that. Tell me more about what you could do. What are the options that you see about this? And would you like to hear my perspective? Sometimes it means I will take this part, right? But I think we always have to modulate and regulate, giving a healthy hand, an empowering hand, not a debilitating hand. I think that's an important distinction as well. If I were to summarize some of the key points from this podcast so far, has been that don't use competence as camouflage. Ask yourself, who do I need to ask for help? And see it as a sign of strength. Ask for help with quality. So share your perspective and ask for help in a way that elicits a quality response. And then in giving a hand, do it with care and accountability. Help to instill accountability and empowerment. Carson, final thoughts from you.
Help and service and support should actually expand people's capacity, as opposed to reinforcing our own ego and need to be needed. And what I mean by that is leveraging help, whether it's you're asking or you're being asked, isn't all about one person and them feeling good about themselves. It's about 1 + 1 = 3. And it's about us having an output that is greater than the sum of the parts because we were able to work together. And I think if we invest in each other with that in mind, the outcomes will be great. You said it earlier, Hylke, and you always say these things so brilliantly, but even though we have that default, when you're doing this important work, again, your antennas are up because you notice these things in yourself. I notice when I get reactive. I notice when I get reflective and I think about, oh gosh, like, shame on me, I messed up, or man, I need to ask for help. I don't know exactly how to do it, or, why is it that I need help here? Looking at that as a positive in who should I go out and enlist to be part of this initiative or part of this effort, or who can I, build community around and with, and why, like, what are we going toward? That mindset shift can make all the difference in the world.
So when in doubt, ask for help. When you feel like you're challenged, ask for help. When you're doing something new, ask for help. When you're learning something new, ask for help. Keep imagining or keep thinking about all the other people that are exactly in the same boat as you are, or invested in the same boat as you are, or are more than happy to lend a hand to the boat that you're in. And notice that it's often our childhood experiences that have formed our perception of how an ask for help will be received. And for most of us, that requires some getting over. It's like, no, you will not be ridiculed. No, you're not looking incompetent. No, you didn't need to come with the right answer. No, you didn't need to solve this by yourself. You're okay. Ask for help. So, thank you for listening today to this podcast on asking for help. Carson, final sentence words from you.
Help is a strength and a superpower, and it is a gateway to a better you. Some of my best experiences have been realizing that many people were doing things in a vacuum, in silos, and instead of feeling compelled to continue doing that or being seen for how great I thought I was doing, I've tried to reach out to others, build community, build sharing. And I got to tell you, that has formed some of the most rewarding and fulfilling relationships of my life and career. So ask for help. It can be a leap of faith, but it's well worth it.
Thank you. Beautifully said. So when we work together, that's what we remember. That's what we remember. The beautiful things we can create when we work together. It's been a delight to be with you, Carson. It's a delight to be with you, listeners. You've been listening to the Connected Teamwork Podcast, episode 82, where we help leaders and teams connect more deeply to themselves, each other, and their purpose. And see you next time at the Connected Teamwork Podcast.
Thank you for listening to the Connected Teamwork Podcast by Growth Leaders Network. Take a moment to reflect on what you learned today that can help build your team. Also, if you like, think about one of your team members and what you appreciate about them. Let them know. Enjoy connecting more deeply to what is great about them. And see you next time at the Connected Teamwork Podcast.